Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Sustainability Storytelling Cafe. This is our fifth episode, and we are here with our global guest in this platform to share stories. Dear viewers and dear change makers, we all know sustainability is must. We need it. It's like our breathing, we need it. There is no alternative. And for our future generation, we have to work always. And lots of organization doing lots of different program to increase the sustainability awareness. And with the alignment with those all pure heart from the leader and US Green Chamber of Commerce, we are bringing our sustainability storytelling cafe. You all know that at the end of the day, we always remember a story. We are connected by story. And our heart actually inspired by the emotion of a story. And with this power of a story, we believe that our global heroes who are actually doing great to develop sustainable solution around the world, all those stories can connect us and inspire us to do best in our horizon, in our area. So with that belief, Shabnam Mastari welcoming all of you in our cafe. You know, this is webinar, but not a webinar because this is cafe. So we are requesting you to bring your coffee, tea, or any beverage to say cheers and share the story. And when we leave, then we'll leave with the power of a story and we'll do transfer all of those energy into our work. Today we have Michelle with us, CEO of Green Chamber of Commerce US, and Constance Rabi. As usual, we three buddy, we always bringing different global people, and we have Shriti and Bain with us. Just wait, we are going to introduce you at a little minute later. So before going to guest, I'm going to invite Michelle, one of our buddy and think tank. Actually, together we pioneered this idea of a storytelling cafe. So I'm inviting Michelle to inaugurate this program and welcoming all of you. Michelle, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shriti. So appreciate everyone being with us today. And I just want to say we have two brave souls here who are just exemplary eco entrepreneurs. And I have had the honor and great privilege of meeting both of them in person. And just to put in perspective of where we're all coming from, we're coming from France, Constance, Sabnam in Bangladesh, Shriti in India, Ben in Belize, and I am in the United States right now. So this is a very global audience, and we constantly want to be bringing you global leaders who are doing things very differently. And so today we will start with Shriti. Shriti Pandey is a TEDx speaker, a United Nations Social Impact Challenge Award winner, and is listed in Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia for Manufacturing. Shriti is founder of Structure Eco, which is the first company in India to make building material using pressed agrofiber panels, which is 100% green building material. Her initiative stops crop stubble burning, which is the leading cause of air pollution in North India. And I would say anybody who's traveled all throughout South Asia, the burning season is something you can never avoid. So this aha moment, I can't wait to hear more about that, is really important. And these panels, are 100% green alternative to gypsum wood-based panels for external and internal built environment. I've seen so many pictures. They're so beautiful. The company promotes circular economy business model and construction industry, which is one of the biggest emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. So welcome, Shriti. We are so honored to have you with us today, and I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Just share my screen. So is my screen visible to everyone? Okay, perfect. Yes. So because it's a storytelling cafe, and personally, I love quotes, I love metaphors. I thought that I'll keep my visual presentation limited to certain quotes that really could just be, the way to get into certain parts of my story. And just to introduce myself, I was born and brought up in India. I'm 32 years old, lived for about 3 years in the US, and for the rest of my life in India, and have been privileged enough to travel around. So, to understand how structure started, I think because I also started solo, so I'm still a solo entrepreneur, though I have a very good team along with me. So we have to go back to 2016, which is when I was in the US. I had just gotten my H-1B visa. So I just want everyone, if they're able to relate to a person who's been a student in the US, is an immigrant, has come there like a lot of other immigrants, and you want to live there, you want to make a good life for yourself. So you study hard, you get your dream job, you're living in New York City, you're finally making money to enjoy the city. And it's about 10 months into doing that, that I feel like the learning that I've been getting in the job that I'm doing is not exponential to how I want it to be. So while my boss was extremely nice, the entire company, I felt that I needed a change, which is when I shared that a lot of people, almost everybody recommended me not to quit my job and rather continue or maybe switch to another company once I get my visa stamp, which is the next time I go to my country, India. But less than a year into doing my job, I decided to quit. So I never got my H1 stamped. And that's why the first quote that I have here is that sometimes you, without even knowing what you're doing, sometimes you really just have to believe in something that is very strong as a gut feeling and be stubborn, which not necessarily in a lot of parts of the world is seen as a positive virtue, often not even associated as a very positive virtue with women in my part of the world. But I think you sometimes just have to be really stubborn to what you believe. And I really believe that I needed a fundamental change. I needed to move physically and figure out what's next. So I moved back to India. I still remember this was September of 2016. I had just gotten back to Delhi. It was getting cold in the US. I land in India where it's still fairly hot, about 38 degrees centigrade. And I take a train. I meet my parents for 2 days, and I take a train and I travel to the south part of India, and I start my fellowship. I start a 13-month-long fellowship where the structure is such that you are supposed to live with families. These are essentially farming communities who are very much doing subsistence farming. So they're not making even more than enough to sell. They're just making enough in terms of produce to take care of themselves. And you have to live with them, learn from them, and figure out a project that you can do with them to support them. And in that process, learn for yourself. So I landed in that village extremely curious, but also extremely confused. I realized very quickly that I know very little. I realized that the biggest limitation that I have, which I didn't think of when I was applying for this fellowship, would be language. So just for context of some of the people who are listening here, India has more than 100 recognized languages in the country. So while I only speak one language, which is Hindi in India besides English, I don't know so many other. So I land in a village which is a tribal belt. And so the language that they speak, I do not speak. So I actually take 2 months to learn a bit of that language before I can start communicating with the community. And from there, my exploration actually started, which was not just understanding a new culture or language, but also understanding how do you communicate with people where you have nothing in common. So this is not that I've moved to another country. This is me just living an entire urban life in India, moving to the rural part of the country and realizing how unaware and unconnected, disconnected I am actually to even so many parts of India. So the first 3 months was just, figuring that out and feeling really lost. So the one thing that I realized, and one of the fellows that had done this fellowship before me recommended as an advice, was to just find one or two women in the village and really shadow them. And don't think, just shadow them the whole day, learn from them, learn what they are doing, learn their routine. And once you build a level of trust with them, you will be able to figure out what to do there for the rest of the, 10, 11 months of that stay. So that's what I do. I get up in the morning. I follow these two women who are sort of the leader in the community. So they do most of the government projects that are there. They are the people the community listens to. And I live with them. I follow them the whole day. And in the evening, in these villages, by 7 p.m., the day is over. So I'm talking about villages where they're also not full electricity the whole time. So after 7, you don't really have much to do. You either go to bed or really nothing. But thankfully, Amazon delivered there in that village. So I would keep delivering a lot of books. So I got to read the maximum amount of books in my life in that 1 year. So that's all I did. I would follow two women the whole day, and I would read in the evening some kind of nonfiction. And that routine, a routine that I had never experienced before, because as an immigrant, as a hardworking student, my whole life, I've always been busy doing things. I've never experienced days and months having such a slow routine. But I think that's what it does. When you have such a slow routine, you're able to be more fundamentally aware. You start to notice things that are not that obvious. I started to get the nuance of what it means to live with communities, pick up their culture, and also be able to understand what are the problems in the community. So after 4 months of living there, I actually land on a project that I realize I can do. And then my actual fellowship starts. Now, while I'm doing the fellowship, I realize that there are only 4 hours I can work. That is when the most of the community is free to work with me on the project I decide to do. And again, the rest of the day, you're fairly free. So I decide to then learn farming, because you're living in an agrarian country, you're in the village, you've never learned that, you've never known that. So I thought I will spend time farming. And I wouldn't call it a risk in hindsight, but if I had not decided to spend my mornings farming and then later in the afternoon working with the women, I would have not started structure. So the reason I share all of this to before I get to the work I do is because I do believe that fundamentally, at least my personal journey has been a lot of moments of inflection, a lot of moments of serendipity, where I had just taken that opportunity, what's in front of me, without thinking much. And that has actually led me to the next step. So it's all dots connecting in hindsight. At that moment, if anyone had told me I would be running a company in India, uh, I would have laughed at my own self. I was really just very clueless being there. So in nutshell, the fellowship was first unlearning what all I knew. So I realized that all the MTech and construction and management that I've studied is pretty much useless in that village. People don't need that education. People don't need that side of me to help them or even contribute to what they are doing. What they really need me to do is be empathetic. What they need me to do is listen more than tell. And in the exercise of trying to help them, I've been the one who's been most benefited. So it was actually a exercise of unlearning before I could learn new things. So that was overall the experience. So listening, unlearning, and all of that leads to the moment where one day I still remember, this was the morning in March. So just for context, the fellowship starts in September. This is next year, March. So it's been 7 months into the fellowship. I go in the morning, it is harvesting season. And I witnessed that while a bunch of farmers are actually harvesting the crop, a bunch of them are busy from one corner of the plot, burning the stubble, which to me seemed very difficult to understand because we were just standing there. So while they're burning, if you can imagine, there are fumes coming, there's smoke all in the air, and all of us standing there in the vicinity of less than few meters is inhaling that. So I'm not talking about people living in Delhi in India who are few 100 kilometers away from the stubble burning. I'm talking about standing right next to it and inhaling their air and trying to understand that why would someone do this to their own selves. And then after talking to a lot of farmers, talking to the community, I realized that they're not doing it out of choice. Of course, they care about their health, they care about their kids, they want to live longer, especially because there's one or two people who are the bread earners for a very big family. But the reason they burn stubble in India, and after learning and researching, it's actually a big part of Southeast Asia, not just India. We do that because we don't have the money to buy equipments to clear off the land. We have a very short period of time in which if you don't clear off the land, you can't start the next crop season. And because of certain such limitation, just for context, about 500 million metric ton, which I know doesn't, or data you can't visualize, but since I'm talking to an audience here, which is global, if all of us can imagine a soccer field, I'm talking about 20 soccer field worth of biomass. Imagine 20 soccer fields filled with biomass. That much biomass is burnt every year in India from one season to another. And people near it and people further from there, like in Delhi, we inhale that. And unfortunately, out of 20 most polluted cities in the country, 14 of them are in India. And Delhi is one of the two most polluted cities in the world, not just in India. So that experience, that entire journey led to the birth of Structure Eco. Now, as the company's name is, which is very giving, which is Straw plus Structure. So we are a company based in India, started in 2018. So I started Structure a year after finishing the fellowship. And that 1 year was again a journey of traveling across India, finding farmers, understanding what would make them not burn and sell, which means what is the price at which we have to be able to buy the stubble from them, finding a partner who can make the building material from us if we are able to source the biomass from farmers, and then learning the technology of making these panels, which actually led me to Europe before I came back to India. So in that next year after the fellowship, I've actually spent 90 days in Europe, in Czech Republic, where I learned from a company that was willing to share in today's world of patents and holding on to our IP. I am really proud of the fact that there was this company that was willing to share with someone they don't know. Again, just establishing trust with another human being from a different part of the world. I write to this founder in Czech Republic over LinkedIn. They tell me that they're okay sharing with me how they're making panels out of wheat straw. And then I apply for my visa, go spend 90 days with them, out of which I spend a good part of it living with the family. And I go every day to the factory, learn from them, see the houses they have built. And that was the most important part of my learning, to come back to India and feel confident that we can make a similar product in India. And this is like, this company didn't ask me for any royalty. They didn't ask me to give them any money for it. They just wanted something that they have been doing for 20 years in Czech Republic to be able to be explored in another part of the world. And they're still very good friends of mine, so I always mention them if I'm mentioning my story, because I don't think it can be said without mentioning them. So that led to the start of Structure in India. And now for last 4 years, we have been making this building material, which is essentially an 8x4 panel, which is very similar to your plaster boards, plywoods, MDFs, and other plastic composite drywall building materials sold in different parts of the world. We have created a product that is net carbon negative. We have engineered it in a way where it is fire retardant. It is termite and moisture proof, something that this part of the world really deals with, a lot of pest and termite issue. And the most important thing is that we have engineered it in a way where it is more durable than a traditional plasterboard. Because just for context, I'm talking about India, which is a very risk-averse country. So if you don't create a product that is better, but at the same time at par in price to what's selling in the market, it's not expensive. So you're not getting a premium to make something better. You are expected to charge the same or better less for a better product. That's the context of India as a market. So when we started, of course, we were expensive, but around 12 months back, a year back, we were able to find a price fit. So now currently we are at par to the price of plywood in India. And right now we're at the stage where we are growing. We just did close to 1 million square feet of sale of panels in last 18 months. We have started exporting. So we are now exporting in Europe and Singapore outside India. So that was my personal, moment of win, that the fact that I could learn from a country in Europe, and then we could create a product in India that could meet those standards and be able to sell it back there, was a personal, sort of a victory moment for me. So that's the product that we have created. It goes into different interior use case in a building. So you can make walls, ceiling, acoustics, furniture out of it. It works the pretty same way like wood. So there's no learning curve for carpenters. and we do sell it at a price that is very competitive. This is the picture of the first house or the first building, you can say, that was made in India with that product. So this was the first pilot project. And this was done when I didn't have any money. So I started the company bootstrapped. So I actually requested my parents to give me a plot of the land and told them that let me make a guest house. If it lasts, you can have it. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. And being my parents, they offered me a free patch of the land, which I didn't have to pay for. And that's a guest house we made for them. So it was like a 2-bedroom kitchen, ground floor structure where all the walls that you see, the door inside the furniture, everything was made using these straw-based panels. Thankfully, it lasted. And that was the start of Structure. So this was done in 2019. And I actually invited Joan and Dalibor, the two people from whom I learned in Czech Republic, and they came all the way from Czech to India. And they were present when we inaugurated this house because I really wanted to, have them there and in a way like thank them for helping me to get there. And since then, as I said, we have grown. We now have more than 100 customers in India corporate. We're exporting. These are name of some of the global companies we are working with. You might have heard some of them like Visa, Citibank, Amazon. Reliance is one of the bigger multinational companies back here in India. So yes, we're now at that journey where I would say our 0 to 1 is done. We are more so in the stage of 1 to 10 in terms of our growth. And this year again, I'm traveling back to Europe, to Italy, to onboard few more partners to sell our product. But that's been my journey of, really just giving into the instincts, trusting myself. And even when you don't know a lot, you just trust the process. And it might happen that a lot that you have studied might not seem useful, but later, like now that I look back, that experience and actual the construction studies that I've done in India and the US finally came together. And I can say that I'm one of those, rare engineers in India who are still doing engineering, not, something else. So very proud about that fact. So yes, that's a short story about structure and how it started for me. And I would stop here and I would let anyone, ask questions later. So yes, that's what I want to end with. And there's one quote that I could not put on the presentation, but that's the essence of structure for us here, which says that waste is only a waste if you waste it, which means that fundamentally there's nothing in the world that is waste. If it is created by nature, it means it has some use. And it's only our limitation in imagination or technology or science to not have been able to figure it out yet. But fundamentally, there's no such thing as waste. So thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening to me.
Shriti, thank you so very much. I love that last quote too. You'll have to send that to us because I think it's something that we need to share far and wide. I want to say that the bravery of, I think the first step of trusting your own personal instincts and saying, even though like being here in the United States, having this opportunity, everybody says, wow, like you're so lucky, you should, just take advantage of this. And you stuck with your gut and just said, no, this is not my path. And moving on from that, I think that probably, I just know that I think we've all been at that point in our life and to go against the grain, to go against everyone's advice. I know I've shared stories on this particular storytelling of just people saying, that is just stupid, Michelle, like stupid, like what are you thinking? And so like that really resonated with me personally. And I love the fact that you talk about, we are all explorers. And I think, yes, every business person probably feels that way, but I think we in the business world, in the eco business world, in the green space, we are charting new territory. There is so much untapped land out there as far as just different types of businesses that can be made. And I'm so grateful that you bring up the company in the Czech Republic that shared, their solution with you to help your business take it to the next level. and all of their resources. And I think that's something that I know that we as US Green Chamber, we're always about sharing. Like there's not enough, there's such a big world out there, and we constantly need to make sure that we are, sharing with each other and making sure that we are, expanding the green momentum. So I just want to say thank you so very, very much. It's just been such an honor to have you. And I know that we have Ben, who is lost internet, and so he had to drive into town. And so I see him just starting to come in now, so he's probably just getting settled. I also think as far as the price per par, I'll just want to comment on that, because I know that like we work with sustainable solutions all the time. And I would say the biggest challenge with that, and what everybody will say, is just green is too expensive. Can't go there, not going to go there. So therefore, it just doesn't make business sense for us to take that action. So the fact that you are now on par with your competitors it means everything. And I know that we at US Green Chamber really want to see you come into that space here in the United States. I'm so grateful, and I know that you are, and I'm grateful that you're in Europe. And as it looks like Ben's just coming in, I will ask one question. I know we're going to still have the Q&A session, but because you and I talked about this in India, if you want to just share a little bit more about why you're like going into Europe, the European market, why that's important, why going into the US market is also important, because obviously, as we talked about, like there's plenty of need right there in India for these products. So if you want to just share that, I think it's important, because I know that when I was in Bangladesh with Sabnam, we definitely had that same situation come up with a biodiesel company.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure like with India, everyone would think that, it is one of the biggest markets out there. So just, sort of servicing that is enough. But the way we see it is that, at least in our part of the world in India, when in the earlier time, we would go and talk to a lot of architects and builders, and we would tell them that this is made with an agricultural residue, or let's say waste. They would see it, they would see it, and they'd be like, oh, if this is made with waste, it should be cheaper, you should be given for free. So we realized that just because this is a new product category or a better product, people are not going to buy it. We actually have to build it in a way where it's aspirational. So now if we look in the context of design, construction, building materials, Europe is sort of one of the, collectively a leader. Most of the bigger drywall building material companies are based out of Europe, like Constance is from France, like Armstrong, Saint-Gobain, Knauf. These are all German, French companies that are global and are the biggest players. And in India, I realized after talking to architects that 70% of the time, those are the products that are spec'd, because they are good, of course, but also because they're seen aspirationally, that they are, German made, they are French made, they're European, American. So we felt that if we have to create that premium value for our products in India, we actually have to step out also parallelly and show that an Italian designer, or a country, let's say, which is known, for the sense of sensibility for design, can and is willing to use this product to make furniture, which will in return make a designer sitting in Mumbai or Delhi feel, good about using it too. And we are seeing that already, giving us returns. So that is the reason we stepped out of India, not because we feel that it's a smaller market, but we have to build it into an aspirational product. And in the long run, we definitely want to actually find local partners, in Europe, and be able to work with them so that they could manufacture this and sell it, because we're very cognizant of the fact that shipping it from here and there has a footprint, which is a problem of any goods that is moved around in this current globalized world that we have. So if, there is a technology that can be replicated in other part of the world, we'd rather work with partners, which is why, as I told you when you were there in India, that because of my own experience with that company in Czech, I would personally never want to patent this. I would want, to share it as well, what we have done, the version that we have created in India. So yes, in the long run, we actually want local manufacturers in other parts of the world to make it and sell it. But right now, just because we're the only company doing this and we're building a category, we felt venturing out as well will sooner build the category. And then hopefully we'll have more partners to take it to other parts of the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so interesting. And I will say the designs that I have seen on your website, and we'll definitely share more about that. Are just so beautiful. They're up there, and I do like that aspirational part of it. And I know we talked a little bit about that reputation to where getting that validation in Europe, and it means something in India, and it means something. And I know that from some conversations, it means something in Bangladesh, and it might mean something in Nepal. So I know that we have partners in some of those areas, and it would be so wonderful to connect and hopefully see that grow. But I do love the fact that you're in Europe and having those really significant large partners that you've shared on the slide. I know Ben is still trying to connect, so go ahead, Constant.
I do have a question, because listening to your story was definitely inspiring to me. Because for backstory, I lived in the US for 10 years and I just came back to France about 3 months ago. And I'm having those moments where I feel like I'm lost. What am I doing? I want to start my career. I'm working for the Global Climate Pledge. I want to do something with, business sustainability. And I do feel those moments sometime where I'm like, I'm lost. It's difficult to listen to my gut. It's difficult not to be discouraged. And if I can be selfish and ask you a little bit of advice, how did you do to trust yourself and trust your gut and be like, okay, I need to listen to me more than anybody else right now. And so if I can ask you that will be nice.
No, yeah, sure. I mean, I think even throughout that year in fellowship, it was not that, just one day I told myself looking in the mirror, and then I never sort of had that moment of, questioning again. It happened a lot of times. I mean, the thing that I tried to do, I don't even know if it's a great, what helped me was the fact that I was in a village. So I actually had the opportunity to, just to give an example, might seem very lame, but when I did the fellowship, I was 26 years old. So living in the village, I would often feel days that, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Look at my friends, making money, whether in India or US. So I actually one day just, for example, deleted all my social media apps, because I felt that right now when I'm having that moment of constant conflict internally, and as you said, where, the outside world is telling you more to keep questioning that and do otherwise, I just felt that the easiest thing to do then was to just literally physically cut myself off, from that part, and just focus on being there in that space, just seeing that as my universe. And I knew that, it seems like very confusing, and moments of uncertainty are not comfortable for anybody. But I felt doing that really helped me. So I would just talk to my parents, few friends, and I really reduced my interaction with a lot of people that whole year until I came out of that and I had more clarity to be more confident about what I wanted to do. So I thought that's the easiest way to do it and actually help myself and my mental sanity is to just cut off. Because the more you're engaged and you're plugged in, it actually just adds on to the more and more conflict and anxiety.
It does.
Not that I'm telling you to delete Instagram off your phone right
No.
now. That's what I did.
You are somebody that is very inspiring to me today. So it's been a pleasure to hear about your stories and how you started the Structure Eco. And so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And I can either give it back to Michelle or see how is Ben doing.
Yeah, let's check in on Ben, and then we'll do more Q&A after his presentation.
Oh, well, I have some connection, so we'll see how it lasts. But did you want me to go ahead and start, or?
If you feel good about that, that'd be great.
Sure.
Oh, actually, I take it back. As you're pulling that up, I will go ahead and do introductions. I got all distracted there for a moment. But as Ben is pulling that up, I want to introduce Ben Bloodworth, who is a sustainable distiller and eco-entrepreneur. Ben is the founder of, as you can see, an off-grid distillery in Belize's Maya Mountains, pioneering cassava-based vodka with commitment to sustainability and community empowerment. With a background in ecological restoration, he integrates renewable energy, ethical farming, and eco-friendly packaging into his operations. By partnering with local farmers and embracing zero waste practices, Ben is redefining spirit production while preserving cultural traditions. Despite the challenges, and I know there's so many, as I heard many stories while I was visiting Ben and his wife Dawn in Belize. Despite all those challenges, his passion for sustainability drives him to create lasting positive change, proving that business and environmental responsibility can go hand in hand. So thank you so very much, Ben, for joining us. And I know, speaking of more challenges, I know you've had some just with connectivity issues. So hopefully we'll be on point for the rest of this presentation here.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, thanks for the introduction. That makes it sound way better than I feel like it is. I just want to make vodka, but we're definitely have some challenges. One of which is we are about 2 miles off grid, and our internet is not always the best. So thanks for bearing with me as I ran into town to try to get a better connection. But as Michelle said, my name is Ben. My previous life, I spent about 25 years in the U.S. in restoration ecology, working all over the country, from bottomland hardwoods to high mountain streams, focusing on wetland and river restoration, and also doing a lot of work with wildfire and wildfire restoration in the western states. But about 15 years ago, Don and I came down to Belize just on a trip, and really liked it a lot. Met some really nice people. It's, for those of you who don't know, it's a very, very small country. Our population is about 400,000 in Central America, but it was a previous English colony until the mid 80s. So it's an English-speaking Central American country. And since my Spanish is not great, that works well for having a nice Central American, Caribbean atmosphere, but still being able to speak and do business in English. So we came to Belize. We decided it might be a fun place to live. So came back a few times looking at properties and talking to people about what we could do to make a living in Belize. We didn't want to retire here. We wanted to do something. And through different discussions with people, we went through all kind of iterations of cattle and sheep and citrus and all kind of things that could work down here. And we were having lunch with a friend of ours, and she's actually originally from the States. And we asked her what she missed most about the States. And without missing a beat, she said vodka. And the reason that is because in Belize, the main industry is tourism. And the second way that the government makes money is through tariffs and duties, is the biggest moneymaker for the government. So Belize produces almost nothing. So everything that comes into the country is immediately marked up, basically double from what you would buy it outside. So for things like alcohol, rum is produced here in great quantities. There are several rum distilleries that have been around for almost 100 years, as many Caribbean countries, but no other alcohol is actually produced in Belize. So these alcohols, like you see here, Belize dollars are exactly half of a US dollar. So the price you see is there in dollars, but basically you're looking at $80 Belize for this little bottle of Absolute here. So that's 40 US, and in the US it's going to cost you about 18. So it's significantly more for alcohol down here. But all of the resorts are buying alcohol because people who come on vacation don't necessarily want to drink rum. They want to drink whatever they want to drink. So we thought this could be a good industry. So we walked out of lunch and Donna said, "Can we make vodka?" Well, I have no idea, but I have a good background in science. It's kind of chemistry, so I'm sure I can figure it out. So I started working with sugar and then tried to think, what's vodka typically made of? It's originally started with potatoes, which another starchy root that might do better in the tropics. And we obviously settled on cassava. Cassava, for those of you around the world, you're probably very familiar with cassava. In the US, not many people know cassava. And it has been used here by the Maya for thousands of years. It's the very first cultivated crop that was found in excavations of Maya ruins and sites. And so obviously it grows well here. So started special ordering cassava into a grocery store in the States after I'd figured out how to make vodka from potatoes. And it was easy with potatoes because there's lots of recipes out there. Nobody's doing this with cassava. So it's been a lot of work just trying to figure out what enzymes to use and everything else. I've talked with a lot of industry people and have actually gotten the most information from scientists in the Philippines that are using distilled cassava for biofuel. And so I've worked a lot from that industry's experience. So originally we thought that we would buy a large property here, grow all the cassava ourselves, and just do everything on site. We started looking at properties, and it's very difficult to buy large properties in Belize without some kind of scam or something illegal going on in the background. And by this point, it was about 8 or 9 years ago, we started down this path, but it was kind of during COVID that we actually made a product that I was working with a local distiller in Colorado that said that he would sell it. So then we actually started looking for property. So we were kind of doing it all not on site, and we almost agreed to a property. And when we got down here and looked at it, we realized that the realtor had been lying about everything. And so that fell through. And so we spent about a year and a half going back and forth to different things before we had a realtor we trust find this property where we ended up. And this is really why we're off grid. We weren't planning to be off grid. We thought starting a distillery would be hard enough. But also at the same time, living in the US and hearing everything about off grid and having a bunch of friends in Colorado living off grid, I thought, well, that's not going to be that big a deal. It's easy to do. I've got friends living off grid. People in the US who say they're off grid aren't actually off grid for the most part. They are attached to the grid. They just have enough solar power that they are feeding the grid more than they're using. So all of my friends that I went to look at their batteries and inverters to see how off grid looked, none of them had batteries and inverters because they're all still actually on the grid. So it took a lot of figuring and calculation. This is my original table looking at all of the still parts and our house parts and everything else to try to figure out how many kilowatts we would need in electric. The average US household uses 30 kilowatts a day. Down here, our actual house, we probably only use 8 or 9 kilowatts. But then with this distillery, obviously we could potentially be using a lot more. So I started looking into what it took to power a still. And in the States, I was just using a very small plug-in electric still and was planning on using they're called Bain Marie, but it's basically a heated oil bath around the still that heats it up. And so I looked into doing that. And typical electric stills use 46 kilowatts an hour. So significantly more electricity. We're talking, I would need hundreds of solar panels just to run the still. And so that didn't really make sense. So we knew we were going to need solar. So we did end up with, you can see here in the background, this is 48 solar panels and 18 batteries with 3 inverters. We have 3 inverters, not only for the wattage provided, but so that we can have 3-phase power in the distillery, which is a lot more efficient. So we actually have split phase and 3-phase power in the distillery. But as far as heating the still, like I said, electricity didn't really make sense. So boiler is really the only other option. In the US, typically all the distilleries I talk to have a boiler just on city gas, and they just don't even think about kind of their power consumption and usage. So looked into it, and down here there's no propane, it's butane. And so we would have to get a big butane tank and have butane deliveries all the time, and decided, since we're off grid and since we're going down this path, it makes much more sense for us to just be as sustainable as possible. So we looked into a biomass boiler, not very used in the States. Again, a lot of biomass boilers used across Indonesia, Philippines, and China. So we ended up getting the small biomass boiler from China. Our original idea was we'll feed cassava, cassava peels and other farm matter into this boiler to run it. Once it actually came down to it, we found that yes, we could do that, but then someone has to stand there pretty much all the time watching the boiler, because there's no way to really maintain the heat. So pellets is really the way to go with boilers. So you need a wood pelletized material, which again, most anywhere but Belize, which is a third world country, you could find a supplier for pellets, but there are no pellets in Belize. So then we bought a pelletizer so we can make our own pellets. And for a source for the pellets, the best thing is sawdust. And we live about 1.5 miles from a very old school Mennonite community that has no electricity, and they have an 8 horsepower sawmill. And so we had already been getting sawdust from them for our composting toilets. So thought, all right, I guess we'll get sawdust. So we're now in the process of building our own do-it-yourself sawdust dryer so that we can get enough humidity and moisture out of the sawdust to make it into pellets. So my welder is actually working on that this week. And we have a boiler guy who is working on it this week on getting the boiler set up so that we can get all of that kind of going. But it took just about a year to get all of our permits in place. The biggest thing with the Department of the Environment was we have a 16-acre property, about 8 of which was already cleared, and 8 was still in jungle. And their biggest concern was when we were going to clear the rest of the jungle. And it took 2 site visits and a lot of communication to convince them that we had no intentions to clear the jungle. We're going to leave it exactly as is. But that's basically as far as environmental regulation went in Belize. Our most difficult thing was getting the building permit. And that was really more about politics, and was really kind of told us whether or not we were going to be able to build at all, or whether the existing distilleries were going to prevent us from getting all our licenses and everything. So we got all the building in place. Well, the permitting in place, like I said, that took almost a year. And then the building process with the rainy season took quite a long time. But after about 7 months, we had a building. All of our equipment arrived just about a year ago, right about a year ago today. Michelle was down here just over a year ago, and we got it just after her visit was when we got all of our equipment. So this was our finished building with with all our solar. That little small building you see next to the panels on the ground is where our batteries and inverters are. Since this, we've actually set up and have collected about 2,600 gallons of water that we have in two large cisterns on site, and we're constructing a bigger underground cistern for our cooling water so that we can just recycle it. But basically, Belize gets, where we are, we get between 70 and 80 inches of rain a year. So water is not a problem as long as you can collect and save it into the dry season, which lasts about 3 months. But I was just telling Constance yesterday, we set up these two 1,300 gallon cisterns, and coming off of our distillery roof, after 2 rains, they were completely full. So we have plenty of available rainwater if we can capture and use it. But just setting up the equipment took a long time down here. It's hard to get machinery and things. So we knew a guy that happened to have a chain hoist. And so we spent a couple of days attaching things to the ceiling and putting the still together with the chain hoist, and ended up with everything set up. None of it happened in the way or the timing that I thought would happen, but it all was eventually put up. All those flags you see in the background there are all the different states we lived in the US coming down here. So once we had all of these things in place to do everything in a power in a way that was sustainable from the power side, we really looked at what we could do with all of our processes. So we were getting 100% recycled glass bottles. Our labels, which you see here, are printed on 100% post-consumer waste paper, and we're also looking at bamboo for those. And then even there's another label company that's providing labels from bagasse, from leftover from sugarcane waste, which obviously we have plenty of that down here with the rum production and the sugar production. So we're looking at other labels in the future as well that we might move to. And then we're using full corks from sustainable cork farm in Portugal for all of our corks. I don't know if you can see the little QR code on our label is for an organization that we're working to start called 1% for Belize, very similar to 1% for the Planet idea, and in which we want to get 1% of our profits. And we've got a few other businesses that we're getting involved to give 1% back to conservation efforts and in Belize and actual Belizean. There's a lot of places like TNC and Bonefish Tarpon Trust and some large organizations that work in Belize, but we actually want to get money back to Belizean-based conservation organizations. So that's part of our business model, is doing that. The other thing is, you probably heard me mention that we wanted to do all of it ourselves as far as growing the cassava. But we looked at the local community, the local farming community, what some of the other local businesses were doing. Belize's biggest export is actually a hot sauce called Marie Sharps, and she all of her peppers for her hot sauce are provided from small local farmers. And so that's actually the route we're going now, where we've talked to several different farmers. It's been a little tough because it's taken a lot longer than expected to put everything together and get it in place. And we cannot get final approval from the government until everything is up and running and we can distill. So we haven't really contracted with any farmers yet, but our plan is to actually pay farmers some upfront to grow for us. Cassava is about a 9-month crop, and then harvest for us. we're expecting to use 500 to 600 pounds of cassava per distillation in our 1,000-liter still. So we really are hoping that we can work with local farmers and build a relationship so that not only are they growing cassava for us, but they're actually growing it, not just planting it once and letting it grow, but actually planting it every couple of weeks or every month so that we can get fresh harvest of cassava root when we need it. Not a problem in Belize. Cassava, you can literally cut it down and throw a piece on the ground and it'll grow. So it's not a difficult crop to grow in Belize, even through the dry season. So we should pretty easily be able to have cassava year round for farmers. What surprised us is this very fundamental religious Mennonite community. Some of those members have actually also approached us about growing cassava for them. So yeah, we'll look at that as well as another local farmer. But we've got options for sure. There's plenty of people that would appreciate a steady income of any kind here. And obviously, the more production we get, the more locals we would like to hire. It's been a lot more of a struggle with the Belizean government than we expected. Belize is, like I said, tourism is really big here, but beyond that, and sustainability as far as tourism goes, and just being kind of a buzzword in the tourism industry, that a lot of the big resorts will say they're doing this sustainably or that. When we talk to people in the government, I tell them we're going to be the only off-grid distillery in the Americas, one of the most sustainable distilleries in the world. They just kind of shrug and say, well, I mean, is it going to taste like Tito's? Like, they don't really care about anything except having availability of a vodka. So yeah, the government in Belize is not really leading the forefront of sustainability in Central America, I would say. And the same, a lot of the locals as well. I always think that people are going to be excited to work with us and do things, and they are from the money perspective, but nobody really cares down here about our being sustainable and fully sustainable. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of what we're doing and how well it can work here, and the attitudes of people here versus, as Michelle was talking about, how expensive it is to do some of these processes in the U.S., but how many people in the U.S. appreciate it and want to do it. So it's definitely kind of odd. But we've been down here about 3 years now. We were expecting to be producing within a year, and that has obviously not happened. So we're still pressing forward, hoping. Like I said, the boiler was one of our big things, getting it connected. It's anytime I would talk to the people that provided the boiler for us and I would ask them questions, they say, oh, you don't have to worry about that. Your boiler team will deal with it. Well, there's no boiler team in Belize. It took us a couple of years to find one guy that works on boilers, and we found him, but he's about 3 hours north. So his first visit was in November, and he's back now. He was hoping to have it all done last week, but boiler pipe is not like regular pipe. You have to have heavy black pipe, and apparently there's only one company in Belize that brings that pipe into the country, and they've been out of the 90-degree elbows for about a month. So we haven't been able to put the boiler together because the parts aren't in Belize. So that the elbows were delivered this morning. So hopefully we're moving forward, but it's definitely been an adventure and a learning experience. I know more about solar energy and consumption than the company that I talked to down here selling solar cars, who had no idea what they were actually talking about. So it's definitely been a huge learning experience in understanding what it is to be truly off-grid. Ironically, Belize buys most of its energy from Mexico, about 60%. And Mexico has gotten, the population has grown enough on the Yucatan Peninsula that they some days don't have enough energy to sell. And so Belize will have blackouts. And so it's kind of ironic that living off grid, we have a much better power supply than the rest of Belize, and also a much cheaper one in the long run. It's energy is very expensive in Belize, and we figured that as much as we put into all of our solar, we would have basically, if we have it for 6 years, we'll have already paid what we would have paid for energy to the Belize government. So yeah, going off grid is actually cheaper here in the long run than being on the grid. So it's been interesting. Obviously, I could talk for hours about some of the ridiculous things that we've had to deal with, but most of that doesn't matter to anywhere except to Belize. So it's just a fun story, just not anything anyone could learn anything from. So if you have any questions in whatever format, feel free.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben. I know we do have questions. So I want to say congratulations on just looking at that picture there when it was an empty room when I left is very exciting to see, and it's beautiful. I want to just make a comment that it's so interesting for you to have gone to this beautiful country, eco-friendly type of country, ecotourism focused country, and fell in love with it and didn't really have a plan of what you were going to do and ended up down this path. And on the government side, I know that even though you speak English and the government speaks English, I would say that I haven't heard such extreme stories of trying to start a business in any other country and the challenges that you've had to overcome, even though you do speak the language. So I think it's always a bit of a warning for those who might just think, oh, no problem. I can just come down and start any type of business in Belize, because I will say that Ben and Dawn are on first name WhatsApp, first person contacts with some of the top governmental leaders in their country. They live in the capital. They're, constantly in contact with the top leaders. So it's not a matter of, well, it's not who because they do know these top leaders. And we were fortunate enough to connect with them, and they have so much respect for what they are doing. So, Ben, that's really, it's so inspiring. I will just say, as a whole, it's really interesting between Shriti and Ben. Both of you went into both of your stories and both of your businesses pretty much knowing nothing about the industry. And so I think that's really exciting. I think it's a lesson for everybody, because they're both you are both so brave to know that you know nothing about an industry and just go, yep, let's dive headfirst into this. So that takes a level of, just nerve that most people don't have. And I think the second thing that you both have in common is that you had to reach out to the experts. You in the Philippines, Ben, and you in the Czech Republic, and that you were able to get that scientific knowledge that led you to be able to start your businesses, essentially. So that was very interesting. You wouldn't think that we would have that much commonality between the two speakers, and in addition to so much more. But thank you so much, and I'm going to pass it over to Constance to do some more questions and answers.
Thank you, Michelle. I was going to say also, when you try to found some similarity, it's like, this is so true. And the resilience behind both of you also is amazing. Like the number of challenges that both of you encompass, and just be like, okay, fine. a challenge, I'll take it. And then after a challenge come another one, you're like, fine, I'll take it too. And I love like because you do it with so much joy and be like, it's okay, I'll do it. Like, and I love that passion when I listen to the both of you. Now for Ben, I do want to ask some questions. Which one is, what advice would you give to other eco-entrepreneur who wants to start an sustainable business and try to not to scare them too much about the challenges, but what would an advice would you give them?
Um, well, kind of, I think the biggest thing is, like you said, the unexpected challenges. Um, the more research you can do to figure out exactly what every challenge is, you can figure out ahead of time would be good, because there are definitely, I was relying too much for industry knowledge as far as like the distilling and the equipment, things like that. I was relying too much on distillers in the US because I knew them. I was going to conferences there, and they just have no idea. Like when you ask them, so in the distilling process, you have to heat everything up. It turns into a vapor, and then you have to run water past it to cool it back down to a liquid. Uh, Most people I talk to in the US have no idea how much liquid is even being used to condense it back down. They don't know how much water they're using for that cooling part. And so that has been a huge challenge. Like I still don't know, because what my still manufacturer says doesn't make any sense. They're saying it takes way more water than all of the distillers I talk to say it does. But the distillers I talk to have no idea how much water they use. So I'm trying to I don't want to just pump well water all the time. I'm trying to do a recycled water system. So I need to know how big to build my cistern. And, that's an expense. And so at one time I was at a 10,000 gallon cistern. Now I'm down to, I think we can build a 6,000 gallon cistern. But all of this is things that, Michelle was saying, you need to talk to the expert. I was talking to the wrong experts. I needed to, like, they're an expert in distilling in the US, but it's just been really hard, because even then, everybody I talk to in the US are like, oh, well, your still install team will know that. I don't have one of those, and so, I mean, I could have paid a big consulting company to come down here and work with us, but then I would have had to pay for them to come down here. And so it just didn't make sense monetarily. But as far as monetarily, one of the reasons that if a challenge comes, you're like, okay, let's roll with this and figure it out, is because you've already invested so much. Like, what else are you going to do? Like, you need to figure it out. And so I think some of those challenges, if we'd realized now, if we knew now what we didn't know 3 years ago, I honestly don't know if we would have done this. Like, I'm still super excited about the outcome of making a completely sustainable spirit. Like, I'm really excited about that. And that's really a part of, why we're still pushing. But another part is we've invested a whole bunch of money, and we need to kind of get some return on that. And so, I would say doing as much research as you can before you invest your life savings is probably a good idea.
That's a good advice, I feel like. The other thing that really struck me when you were talking was the power of the community. My question was, what role does community engagement play in building a successful, sustainable business? But what I really want to know is, how do you feel your community impacted your business while building your business? Or was
Sure.
that?
We would definitely not be as far along as we are, or maybe get it done at all, without having built ties in the community. Here's a local guy that we got out that he was born and raised in Belize here in Belmopan, and he was the guy that we had out working with heavy equipment, smoothing some stuff for us. And it was him that I was talking to, and I was super frustrated about not being able to find equipment to build the still. And he was the one that was like, well, wait a second, I've got something that'll do that. I can just bring it over. And the same with the Mennonites. Like the boiler weighs 1.5 tons, and it was just sitting on a pallet, and I couldn't even figure out how to get it off the pallet onto the floor because it weighs 1.5 tons. So how do you pick up something that weighs 3,000 pounds off of? You only need to raise it 4 inches to drop it 4 inches, but how do you do that? And so I went up and the Mennonites, they move houses with chains. So I went up and got a Mennonite I know to come down with me and look at it, and we talked through it and figure out how to do it. And it's something that I've been worrying about for months. And he brought some equipment down that he would use to move a house, and in 10 minutes it was done. And then as far as like the local, Michelle talking about us knowing these really high up people, that started from a relationship with a local. It was actually the girl I was talking about that said she missed vodka. Her husband is a local guy that used to run. He was the head of a fishing association here in Belize, and I'm a big fly fisherman, and so we really kind of hit it off over that. And he would invite us down to go to and they actually do they do tournaments, but they're all sustainable. They're all catch and release, and a lot of them they'll actually take fin samples and tag the fish and do all kinds of things during the tournament. And he's really excited about what we're doing. And his family's been in Belize a long time and are fairly influential. And so when I got in a point of frustration and was just I was meeting him for lunch and was talking about all the frustrations, and he actually hooked me up with someone who knew the minister of Home Affairs, is who we ended up helping us out with one of our permits. And yeah, so I mean, 3 completely different Belizean communities that we've built ties with that have helped us out in tremendous ways. I mean, there's zero chance we could have just come down here and done this in a silo on our own. It's just there's no way it could have happened. And that's before we're going to be relying on the community to provide us with our product. So yeah, the community ties will just continue to strengthen and grow for sure.
I'm wondering, and I think Constance's question led right into what you had started. So if you don't mind me jumping in, Constance, because I think anybody starting a business, money is it. Where am I going to get the money? So I know, Ben, it sounds like that's a lot of personal investments, but I also know you have other funding mechanisms because we've shared those. But Shriti, if you wouldn't mind starting of just sharing, like, you talked about your parents, giving you the land, but what investment did you have to start? But then also, have there been any other investments that have come from other people or other ways? And what were those, and what advice could you give to others? So both of you, I'll start with you, Shriti.
Sure. So when I started Structure, we started with a paid up capital of about $15,000. That's what we started with. Actually, there's an interesting story for that. So I, of course, didn't go to like any proper investor. It was essentially me putting in about $5,000, and then rest I actually went to a lot of women in my family. So starting from my grandmother to my mother, my aunt, my sister. So there were 10 shareholders in Structure from day one, all women, who gave $1,000 each. So they were the 10 shareholders of Structure along with me. My mother, the other director, still is. So that's how Structure started. They all are still on the cap table. And that was actually an idea my dad gave me. He's like, if you're raising, why don't you go and ask other women in the family, because from the context of India, a lot of people are not, like, a lot of women do not know investing. They don't know they can actually invest and be part of something. And in hindsight, I think that's a great idea because, again, from the cultural context of being a woman in India, once they were invested in the company, they were invested in me working. towards it, So I never got questions, oh, why are you not getting married? Why are you not, focusing on that versus building this? Because now they invested in this building. So that's a start of structure. But since then, we have raised about 250,000 US dollars in equity and similar amount of grants. So we had applied for a lot of grants. And we have actually been fortunate to get a lot of American and European grants. In India, you don't have that many grants for like those kind of programs. So we have raised equal equity, equal grant. And now this year, we are looking to raise our first seed round of investment, which would be close to $1 million. So we've been quite frugal that way, not raised a lot. But yeah, that's how much of money we have raised.
That's so
You just gave me,
beautiful.
yeah, you gave me
So
chills
powerful.
talking about your family giving. So yeah, all of the above. Brilliant story. And Ben, if you would like to share.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please go on, Ben. After you.
Oh, I was just gonna say we went pretty much the opposite route. We didn't want to be beholden to any shareholders, and none of our family, well, all of our family thought it was a terrible idea, so they weren't about to invest in anything. They didn't understand why we would want to leave the U.S. My mother is still convinced that I will never see her again now that I, went to Central America. So we at the kind of top of the ridiculous house bubble market in the U.S., we sold our house in Colorado and moved to Donna's dad's farm in Oklahoma and lived there while we were kind of finalizing everything down here for about 6 or 7 months, and then moved down here. And so all of our money included the purchase of the land. We live on the same property as the distillery. So our house, the distillery, the building, all the permitting, all of that, all of the still equipment, which is not inexpensive. But we started out with basically and of course all our solar and panels and batteries and inverters and everything. We started out with about 400,000 that we were hoping we could do everything for. Since then, and that was basically from the sale of our house. Since then, I have put in about another 100 from just what used to be personal savings. And then we did a GoFundMe or a Indiegogo campaign that we got a lot of really good traction for, but not a lot of donations for. So I think we ended up with about maybe 5,000 or 6,000 from that. And then we just cashed in some stocks to get another 50. And that's where we are now. Hoping we'll be able to do it with that. So all in all, it'll be about probably about a $600,000 investment, which to do a regular, not even off-grid with solar and all that, distillery in the U.S., it's recommended that you have at least 2 million to start. The average distillery these days is actually a 30 million start. But a lot of that, kind of most of it, is probably in advertising, because you have people like Ryan Reynolds and all these guys coming in, putting their name on the distillery. So, and the market is huge, tremendous there. So here we're not worried that much about marketing. I already have a major resort chain that calls me monthly asking if we have product yet. So we don't think that purchase is going to be a problem once we get going. Distributing around the country might be an issue, but we'll figure that out when we get there.
Wow.
It's
Yeah,
so
thank you both for that.
inspiring, so
Yes.
inspiring. And I'm just taking some moments from you, Michelle and Constance, that we know, Ben. I found that the word actually rooming in my head, Ben from village and Shruti from India. So you two become two brands in my head. Um, when I was listening to you, first I want to come to you, Ben, and then Shruti, same question. I'm really curious to know you because doing business, assuring sustainability, assuring green business in all process, it's quite tough fight you already are in, and in future you are committed to continue. So with your eyes, you are two superhero without cape. You are so brave soul here. It's just a curiosity that the sustainable world with your initiative, where you want to go, what dream you are actually having in your mind, that ambitious dream. Actually, we want to touch that through your dreams, through your eyes, that what legacy you want to keep behind after some years, where you want to see, where you want to go, what there could be in these two area.
Good question.
Well, I would say, uh, as far as kind of business processes and sustainability, uh, I one thing I would like to do, and I thought about tackling it, but I'm going to wait until other things have worked themselves out. One of the main components of producing vodka is the actually um, filtering the vodka to get that like burn. If you have a cheap vodka, it kind of burns. It's because it wasn't really filtered or filtered enough. So that filtering process is all with charcoal. So I would actually like to. We have about 60 coconut palms on the property, and I would like to make our own charcoal from our coconuts. And once we're doing that, actually potentially start a coconut charcoal kind of industry, maybe for locals to take on just here in Belize, because that's coconut charcoal, at least in the U.S., is the most expensive charcoal you can get. So if you could somehow make that and get locals doing more than just coconut water with their coconut, because you can do coconut water and then use the shells to make charcoal. I mean, right now there's just piles of coconut all over the country from where people sell coconut water, and that's all they do with it. So that's really the only. I don't see myself ever making our own glass. That's a step beyond. So I think from changing any processes we're doing now, it would be nice to make our own coconut charcoal. As far as kind of long term and what one of our original goals for coming down and kind of starting this idea of the 1% for Belize, we would love to get that up to more like 3 or 5%, and not only for conservation, but so Belize, the government pays for school for children up to the age of about 13, 12 or 13. And then after that, to go to secondary school, what in the US we would call middle school or high school, the family has to actually pay. And most families can't afford for their children to go on to that. So we would like to actually start a big scholarship program to put children through more school. Is kind of what that was one of the things Donna really wanted to focus on. I'm the big environmental guy, so I want to give to the conservation groups, but Donna wants to like help kids through school. So whatever, we'll do that too. But that's so that's kind of where we would like to see going, is that we're making enough money that we can actually kind of lift up portions of the Belize populace that I think could really benefit from it. So.
Wow, that's really impressive. And that comment about the coconut shells reminds me about the quote that Shriti gave at the end of her presentation. I'm not sure if you had internet at that point, but
Right.
but it completely reminds me of that.
I just want to acknowledge, Ben, when you shared 10% for Belize, you just keep on your product. I was reading it's actually love for Belize because it's so clear and give the clarity that whatever you have, you are contributing, you are doing, you are researching for your family as well as more for your country. And you just said that you are not going to clear the jungle, and the emotion you put that yes, you are not going to clear the jungle because that's your property as well, that's your heritage. So all moment I was actually feeling goosebump from your presentation, that how actually you are respecting the sustainability through your work, through your research, and how much courage you are having to take this challenge as like an adventure. This is great. So I
Oh,
I
thanks.
believe this is not the end, and I today also in my undergrad class I was sharing with university students that about international business. So definitely I'll share your story, and I would like to invite you, Ben, to inspire them to research on this whole process. So maybe I would like to invite you again because they are searching, they are working with their Trump paper. So I would love to invite you and Shriti because you two are just start from scratch and great. So I'm just going to use Shriti to know I'm just couldn't hold my emotion. That's why I jumped in. Shriti, please share your goal, your dream, that big ambition.
Yeah, thanks, Shabnam. So I think for us, it is so what we have seen in last, I would say 7 years, not six, of starting this journey is that like it's really hard to penetrate building materials or construction as an industry. It's a very old, rigid industry. It's not like, new age industries where people accept innovation. So in the long term, in another 7 to 10 years, we would definitely want structure to grow and be at a place where it's, sustainable, making enough profits to grow, but use some of that money to actually, create a platform where in last 7 years, so while we are young, to be honest, we were the first company that actually created an alternative material in India. And in last 7 years, we've been very fortunate to see a lot of other companies coming up, making bricks with hempcrete, doing sustainable products using bamboo, even coconut for that matter. So we would want to really create a fund where we could support those new, entrepreneurs, because I don't want other people to have like a 7 or 10 year journey of, sort of creating a category. It should be faster. And we would really want to share that knowledge, share our resource, share our customers, market access. And, because I do believe that most of them don't have to compete. Bamboo will go in some part of the building, brick will go somewhere, our panels will go somewhere, and we could really create a net better, building envelope. So we would really like to do that, is to create an ecosystem and a platform where we could support other new building materials, because we need a lot of them, and a lot of other alternative materials can be converted into better low carbon solutions, and support them. That would be what we would want structure in the long term be doing as a organization.
That's beautiful as well.
Wow, so powerful, so powerful. I just would like to request both of you superheroes, that it would be great if you can create your story chain, research chain with some of or one of your universities. Because if you align with them, those students, they can continuously learn from you, and they will be more inspired to take this legacy forward. So because the story, the power of his story is so powerful. You can see we three, we're just juggling, and 200 plus people listening currently through Facebook and YouTube. I was just checking, so it was so much inspiring. It's great. I hope this world never going to lose its sustainability path, because you are the people who are in steering. Michelle, to you.
Yes, thank you so much. I so agree, and I'm so grateful for the time that you've given us today. And with the stories, I mean, just identifying, I have to give a shout out to our Global Sustainable solutions team because they're the ones that found Shriti, our global sustainability expedition team led by Constance, who found Ben on this journey. So it is about us all coming together as a family, staying in touch, making sure that we support each other. If we didn't, if others didn't help you, then you wouldn't be here today and we wouldn't be able to share your story. So we want to continue to help you in this journey as well. But I just want to say thank you so very much. And I do also want to say that we do have a upcoming webinar on March, what is the March 6th. International Women's Day is coming up, and 2 days before that, we will be having global women's sustainability champions who will be speaking, and our very own Subnam will be telling her really powerful story there. So it will be included, stories will be included with that. And so we hope that you will all join us for that event as well. But thank you both so much, Shriti and Ben. So inspiring.
And I'd like to take this platform and opportunity to share with you, Ben and Shriti, that US Green Chamber of Commerce started this expedition for last 2 years. They are connecting all dots, and this year we came together with a plan that we are going to organize. Our Constance already start work with 2 nights sleep. She already start working, that we are going to do at the end of this year, on October. We are planning to organize our first global conference on all those sustainability expeditioner countries. So we all storyteller will be there, and we are going to organize this 2 days long summit. We are going to invite more people who are actually working on different key decision making position in government, in NGO, and everywhere around the world. We would like to share all of our stories to make we all are connected, and it would be a big chain to inspire more people and work together. So this is not US Chamber of Commerce or the Leaders project. This is all of our project. So you all are being part. This is the invitation to you. And Ben, if I'm not inviting you, it will be a very dishonesty with my project that Shriti and Ben, we are actually organizing another project that is for our youth sustainability coaching and leadership program for youth. So we would like to invite you to be a mentor for that program. So your story, your inspiration and guts that can be inspiring for our youths all around the world. So we are going to give this opportunity and fellowship to 100 students around the world, mostly in South Asia and emerging or developing countries. So Ben, you can also invite your country's student or someone. Actually, we are going to offer 100 youth